Oh, goody.
All right, what's going on, everybody? Zombies here again, and today we're back with another Marvel Snap video. So, new season, Thunderbolts dropping today, and we have two new cards to go over. Season Pass card, Baron Zemo, and our Week 1 card, Red Hulk. Baron Zemo is a 3/5 that reads, on reveal, recruit the lowest cost card from your opponent's deck to your side of this location. So you'll be nabbing their lowest cost card, throw it on your side, you get all the benefits, or in some cases, drawbacks that includes. And then Red Hulk. Red Hulk is a 6/11 that reads, when your opponent ends a turn with unspent energy, +4 power if in hand or in play. So kind of a flip side to the high Evo Hulk. Now it is worth noting with Red Hulk that it does show the opponent when it gets pumped up. So you will get essentially one pump without them knowing, but after that first +4, your opponent is going to know that Red Hulk is in your hand and has the option of playing around it if possible. Now in terms of general strength, I think Zemo is probably going to be a pretty decent card in the right deck. On average, I think you're going to be getting a 3/7 at worst. The board space is really the main thing you're going to have to think about, as well as maybe that small downside of if you play it early, you are technically increasing the odds of your opponent drawing whatever cards are left in their deck. But there are definitely a lot of case scenarios where it will be a lot better than a 3/7. If we think about Gladiator, that is a card that sometimes has a game-losingly bad downside that people are willing to play because it gives you a chance of having a 3/8 without a downside sometimes. And so the fact that this will often be a 3/7, and there will be quite a few times when it is much more than a 3/7, I think means this card has a very decent chance of being pretty successful. And then Red Hulk, honestly, I think this card is not only kind of boring, but also kind of bad. It is neat how it's like the flip side of the high Evo Hulk, but the fact that your opponent gets the information so they can play around it definitely makes it worse. Not only because they can choose to make it not grow, but also because they will know how big your Red Hulk is and the fact that you have it in hand. So if they know they're going to lose to that, they can just retreat and save some cube equity. It's also a card that's really hard to build around, as there are not a whole ton of ways in Marvel Snap for you to limit what your opponent can do in terms of playing their cards. There are obviously a few that have synergy with this, like Iceman, maybe some rocks in the deck, but there really aren't that many options that enable you to make it harder for your opponent to curve out and use all of their energy every turn. It more so falls on their draw more than you interacting with what they can play. That said, I don't think the card is totally awful. Like sometimes it'll just be a really big guy, and that's fine. But it definitely does not seem like one of the stronger cards in my opinion. In terms of the Spotlight Cash Week, I think this one's pretty bad. So we have Red Hulk, Sebastian Shaw, and Echo. Echo saw a bit of relevancy when Miss Marvel was going in like every deck under the sun. However, those times have since passed, and Echo remains kind of a niche tech card that doesn't really make the cut in a lot of decks because ongoing isn't a super prominent part of the meta, or at least in a way where Echo can actually deal with it, like how she could deal with Miss Marvel fairly effectively. Sebastian Shaw is a Surfer card. If you like Surfer, Shaw is a good card to pick up. If you do not care about Silver Surfer, Sebastian Shaw is a card you should not really prioritize getting. And then Red Hulk, as previously mentioned, I don't think it's that great of a card. It's just kind of mediocre, but it's also really hard to build around. Like there just isn't a whole lot of options to build around it. I do have one deck that we're going to show here in a minute that I am pretty excited for. It's like the one Red Hulk deck I think could actually be interesting. But as someone who likes to brew decks and explore different possibilities, I found it quite hard to actually find decks that want to make space for the Red Hulk that can actually utilize it to the best of its ability. So yeah, those are the two new cards. Let's take a look at our day one decks for them. So we're going to start out with Red Hulk, just because I have less decks for this card, because as previously mentioned, I don't think it's the most interesting card to build around. But there is one deck I do think will actually be quite fun with Red Hulk, though it probably could work without him too, but I do think he actually can be beneficial in the style of deck. And that is a Darkhawk Taxes style deck. So we are running kind of all the ways to annoy our opponent possible here. We have Ham and Iceman to mess with their hand. We have Korg and Rockslide to mess with their deck. We have Mobius to mess with their cost reduction. We have Pixie as a high roll element. You can play this deck without Pixie. I don't think you need Pixie for the deck to be good, but she does add some really powerful high roll, and if we're already running Mobius as a kind of taxing effect, Pixie pairs really well with him. The fact that you can get a cheaper Hawk or Doom or Red Hulk, they don't need to be one cost. Even if you get those cards down to like 2 or 3 costs, they are incredibly impactful and can be pretty hard for the opponent to deal with. But if you don't have Pixie or you don't want to play her, I think you can just sub her out for pretty much any 2-drop, or you could add another more like control-y card like Shang-Chi or a tech of your choice. You definitely don't need Pixie for this deck, but I do think she is a solid addition to it. Iron Lad does a lot of work in this deck because just about every card in this deck is a good copy for Iron Lad. Like, it's actually such an insane critical mass of good text on cards that I think he is very, very powerful. He also has some pretty good synergy with Red Hulk, where if you end up getting the benefit of Red Hulk, instead of just getting the +4, you might get +8. And one of those will be on a card that already is on the board, which is pretty nice. Hope Summers is here as just another good 3-drop. Again, another card where you probably don't need to have this card in order to play the deck, but she does help out our curve a little bit, because if we play Hope on 3, we get some energy ramp going on turn 4. It allows us to play potentially both of our 6-drops in Dr. Doom or Red Hulk, or Darkhawk alongside another cheaper 1 or 2 cost card. But yeah, if you really like annoying your opponent, whether that be making their draws bad, making their cost reduction not as good, messing with their hand, this is very much going to be a deck I think you will enjoy. And then our second Red Hulk deck here is just a slight iteration on the Hela ramp deck from a little while ago. I like this deck quite a bit. I thought it was pretty fun. It leverages Corvus to be able to do some ramp stuff as well as Electro. And Hela is one of the game plans we have, but the nice thing about this deck is not all in on the Hela plan. You can also just be a ramp deck. Play a 5-on-4, 6-on-6, 6-on-7, ends up being pretty good. Did used to have Sunspot in this deck, ended up cutting it for Blade because I just wanted to give both Hela and Proxima a little bit more value in the deck. But the cool thing about this deck is you aren't super focused on the discard. And because of Corvus's ramp ability, you can play Corvus on turn 3, then end up playing Hela on turn 5, and use Odin to have Corvus discard 2 more cards and bring them back with Hela, which is really strong. But yeah, if you just want to be doing some ramp shenanigans, this is probably not a terrible way to make use of Red Hulk. And then moving on to Zemo, this is the card I think more people are going to be interested in, probably because more people are going to be getting this card via the season pass. Obviously, the first place you might think to use this card is Silver Surfer, because, well, he's a 3-drop that is well statted. And I think that makes a lot of sense. So I've been playing quite a bit of this Surfer version. It's been doing pretty well for me. I did have Wong in the Zemo slot. It's possible you might still want Wong, especially because you could use Wong with Zemo for some additional value. But I think all of our 3-drops are really, really good here. Absorbing Man has got a fair bit better, not only because it can combo with Zemo, but because of Hope allowing you to be able to play it alongside Silver Surfer on the final turn of the game without having to have another cost-reducing card like Sarah involved. Mobius gives us a bit of control. Gladiator and Shaw let us go big. Killmonger deals with small threats and allows us to play Nova to pump up our power even more. Forge, still really good in Surfer, mainly for buffing Brood. The Forge, Brood, Absorbing Man curve out is really, really good. But then Jeff, because, well, he's just Jeff, and he's good with Hope Summers. This one I'm definitely looking forward to. This is Ronin Zemo. So I've liked Ronin for quite some time now, and especially if you are not the biggest fan of Destroy, I think this will be a deck for you. You don't actually run a whole ton of ways to enable Baron Zemo here. We're mainly just playing him for stats. However, Maximus works nice with Ronin because we want them to have a big hand size, and it allows you on the final turn of the game to play Maximus, draw them 2 cards, makes your Ronin bigger, and that means they should only have 1 card left in their deck, unless they've drawn more or had something removed from their deck, and that means that Baron Zemo is just going to pull that card, so it could even be a really big card, which is nice. Gladiator also has a little bit of synergy here, as it can thin out their deck, but just keep that in mind with Maximus, because if you Gladiator and then Maximus, there aren't going to be any more cards left for you to Zemo. Lad gets good value here, a lot of good powerful copy targets. You will have to be a little mindful with Baron Zemo and Miss Marvel, but I think she is still just so good, you probably want to run her. We are running the Armor Cosmo package here. This is a nod to destroy, but also really just acts as a way to protect our Ronin. One benefit of Ronin decks I find is that they often get priority pretty well, and a lot of opponents will snap thinking they can Shang-Chi you because Armor and Cosmo aren't as common as they used to be. And then you can protect your big thing, slam down another thing, and then hopefully win the game while getting some nice cubes. Doom lets us go wide, good with Miss Marvel, good with Iron Lad. Master Mold helps clog the hand, which is good for Ronin. Nebula and Iceman are some premier 1-drops. And that's the deck. You could also run Yondu if you really wanted to, but I think between Maximus and Gladiator, we really don't need anything else to help Zemo. He's just going to be kind of a stat stick. Another direction you could go with Zemo is a Mockingbird route. So the idea with this one is Zemo is getting us a card from the opponent's deck into play, reduces Mockingbird. We have a few other ways to reduce Mockingbird, such as Squirrel Girl, Cable, which also can help with Zemo by thinning their deck, Mirage, and sometimes Nico. So a lot of ways to reduce Mockingbird here. Mobius as a counter mainly to Loki to shut down their cost reducing shenanigans, as that's pretty good against this deck. Hope for some excess energy ramp. Lad because there are quite a few good targets. Blue Marvel to buff us going wide because this deck will be playing a lot of cards across the board. And Doom just as a premier 6-drop that also goes wide, and as synergy with Mockingbird if you get it down early with Hope or off of Iron Lad. Sarah, I think, actually has some decent potential to be a pretty decent home for Zemo. The main reason for that being Sarah already liked running Maximus, and as previously mentioned, you can use Maximus on the final turn to make it so Baron Zemo might actually hit something really big, which is something that is kind of nice. Other than that, pretty standard Sarah control deck. We are running Kitty here just because of the synergy with Hope Summers. We have answers to a lot of threats in the game with Shang-Chi, Killmonger, and Enchantress. And Miss Marvel just as another way to put some more power on the board. And Shadow King, which I'm not sure if it's super needed right now, but I think it does do a whole ton in the Destroy matchup, which is fairly common, so figured we'd include it. That's probably one of the flex spots, though. And our last deck here, probably the worst of the bunch, but if you are someone who just likes milling your opponent's deck, figured we'd throw this one in for fun. This runs like all the ways I can think of to actually take cards out of your opponent's deck. So we have Yondu to mill a card, we have Cable to steal a card, Maximus, who's kind of a payoff for your opponent not having as many cards left in the deck, or you can combo it with Zemo on the final turn. So that's pretty decent. Gladiator can also mill a card. Absorbing Man can copy Zemo to steal another card. So if you really just want to delete your opponent's deck, I think this is going to be the way to do it. Snowguard gives us a little bit of location control, as well as some more 3-drops for Surfer, which is nice. Polaris was just kind of the final spot where wasn't really sure what to put in there. So that's kind of your flex spot. You can put in any 3-drop of your choosing. Spider-Man, Killmonger, whatever suits you. You could put in Shaw in that spot as well if you want a bit of a bigger stat stick, but I know not everyone has Shaw, so I did want to have a Surfer deck in here that doesn't necessarily need him. Almost certainly this is going to be the least competitive deck of the bunch, but if you're just looking for a bit of fun with milling out your opponent's cards, this is a neat way to do it. And yeah, that's going to wrap it up for our day 1 decks for Baron Zemo and Red Hulk. As always, links will be in the description if you want to grab any of the decks to import into the game for yourself. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Are you interested in these cards? Are you going to be picking either or both of them up? If you have any deck ideas you didn't see here, I'd love to hear it. It's going to wrap it up for this one, though. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, remember to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.